Okay, so this just gives you my name and the other two co-chairs' names. All right, the agenda for this morning. So I'll expect to take about 10 minutes to talk about the information quality cluster itself and tell you what it's about. I see a number of people here that are new to this, so it will be a useful introduction. And then we have 4 presentations to follow. The NASA Data Quality Working Group's recommendations and publications. Yashing Wei is going to be talking about that. We have been developing an uncertainty white paper, and David Moroney has been leading it, so he'll be talking about the status of that paper. And we have a guest speaker from Australia who has joined us remotely, and Ivana Ivanova, and she'll be talking about OGC and the data quality. I had put it as tentative title and I forgot to change that, so I'm sorry about that, Ivana. And maturity matrices update. Peng is going to be talking about that. She has been working on it for years and she can talk about it for hours, but she has only 15 minutes to do that. And then we'll have a discussion period for about 15 minutes. I would like to draw your attention to the bit.ly little URL there. If all of you could sign on to that and help with taking notes in the meeting, it'll be greatly helpful. So I'll leave that up for just a few more seconds. IQC _ 2019 0716, which is today's date, _ notes. Done? Okay. All right, so what is the information quality cluster about? We have a long and ambitious statement there. We could probably abbreviate it like ECIP does and say make data matter or data to action sort of thing. But basically we want to be internationally recognized and be authoritative and responsive source of information about data quality standards and best practices. When we talk about information quality, we look at 4 aspects of it: science quality, product quality, stewardship quality, and service quality. And what do? We share experiences, collaborate internationally, and internal to the country as well, and invite speakers at monthly telecons, and we have sessions and presentations at various conferences and ECIP meetings. We maintain a wiki site with a lot of useful references, and we do have some publications. There are 2 of them that are shown there that have been published already, and third one we are working on with a number of authors coming from everywhere. The 4 aspects of data quality or information quality that I talked about: scientific quality involves accuracy, precision, uncertainty, validity, and suitability for use in various applications. Product quality says how well have the scientific quality been assessed and captured and documented so that people can use them. Completeness of metadata and documentation, provenance and context, etc., contribute to product quality. Stewardship quality is how well are the data managed and preserved and cared for by an archive or repository. And service quality is how easy is it for users to find, get, understand, and trust and use the data. Whether the archive has people who understand data so that they can answer questions if people have questions about data quality. And IQC activities, we share experiences, so we collaborate with other ECIP clusters and have guest presentations, as I mentioned, at our monthly telecons and biannual meetings. We actively evaluate best practices and standards of data quality from the earth science community. For example, the NASA Data Quality Working Group existed for the last 5 years, and it just concluded its work pretty much by the March of this year. And you'll hear more about that from Yashing Wei. Improving collection, description, discovery, and usability of information about data quality in earth science data products. assessing recommendations from other groups, like the NASA Data Quality Working Group, consistently provide guidance to data managers and stewards on implementation of data quality, best practices and standards, especially the maturity matrices developed by NOAA with a lot of leadership from Peng, have been adopted by other agencies and organizations. And supporting data producers, distributors, and intermediaries with various kinds of information. So this is a slide from Peng, and she has this incorporated in her presentation that's coming up, so I'll not go into a lot of detail here. The main point of it is that it has been used. NOAA has applied it to over 800 plus NOAA datasets, and it's also adopted and adapted by international data management and stewardship entities. So you'll hear more about it from Peng. And we have a white paper in preparation on which we have a presentation by David coming up. So not to say a whole lot of that in this presentation. So that paper is in preparation, led by David. And the focus is on discovery and not recommendations. We cover 4 aspects of 4 perspectives about uncertainty and identifying commonality and differences between the perspectives. You'll hear more about it very soon. And there are a lot of materials available to the community on the IQ information quality wiki page on the ECFed web pages. And we talk about agency policies and guidelines, so references to that are available. There are a number of information quality related papers and presentations and standards and web pages. And we have a number of monthly telecons that feature invited speakers, and the presenters can put their material on Figshare and get DOIs so that they are referenceable materials. We also have recordings of presentations. So we are not alone in dealing with information quality. There are many players around the world. So the inner ellipse shows organizations and entities within the United States, and the outside ellipse shows the foreign and international. The color coding here is that the red highlight here around some organizations here indicate that we have had invited speakers over the last year from those people, those organizations. And the rest of the agenda for this meeting is shown here. So remind you again, in case you didn't capture the URL on the bottom, so that everybody can help take notes in this meeting. So that's the URL. I believe that's the last slide I had, and I think the next presentation is by Yashing. And how do you get out of this? If you are a Mac user, you'll be faster in dealing with it.
Let me try to find it.
Could you just write it on a piece of paper for me?
Which?
The URL for meeting notes.
Oh, URL for meeting notes?
Oh, okay, great.
You want to show the URL to the audience?
I think.
The URL is on the schedule website. You can go to the session and then on the
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't pause for questions. Do you have any questions? Okay, if not, take away.
Thank you. Thank you, Rama. Thanks, everyone. This is Yaxing Wei. I'm from Oak Ridge, RNL DAC, one of NASA's data centers. I'm going to talk about the recommendations and publications that came out of the NASA's Data Quality Working Group. The NASA Data Quality Working Group has been going on actually for quite a few years, from I think 2014, and the working group was formally concluded earlier this year, but there are still some activities going on to wrap up things, like to finish the publication. First, I want to thank my colleagues, and this working group has been chaired by David Moroni from JPL for quite a few years, and Rama has been working together with David to chair the working group, and I started chairing this working group, I think 1 or 2 years ago, to help with the activities going on in this working group. And also a lot of working group members, Bob Downs, John, Donna, and many other members from different organizations. So the outline of today's talk mainly contains two topics. One, the first one is the outcomes of the data quality working group in the years from 2014 to 18. And then I'm going to highlight a number of documents that we delivered to NASA's Earth Science Data and Information System Project Standards Office, ESO. So as I just mentioned, the Data Quality Working Group started in 2014, and officially it was concluded earlier this year. So this should be 2019. There are a few things I want to highlight here. Data quality, its aspects, and the phases that the data quality working group has been focusing on. Rama has mentioned that the 4 aspects of data quality information, the scientific quality, product quality, stewardship quality, and service. And also in the data quality working group, we identify and focus on 4 phases of the data quality information management lifecycle. That includes capturing, how to capture the appropriate quality information, and how to describe the quality information in some ideally standardized framework. And then once we have the quality information, how we can leverage that to facilitate the discovery of data products that meet users' specific needs, and that can include the needs on quality. And also enabling use, how the quality information can better enable the use of data products. And then the 4 primary focus area of the data quality working group includes the accuracy, precision, and uncertainty, the distinguishability. I mean, how the quality information can help users to distinguish one product to others, especially if they are similar. And then the applicability, how users can determine whether a data product is applicable or appropriate for his specific needs. And the usability, how to better increase the user, how to help users to use the data by including and considering the quality information aspects. The data quality working group, we came up with a lot of quality related recommendations, and we got like total 93 recommendations, and there are many that you can check, but this slide only shows one example. For example, this is a recommendation that we give to SDS, NASA SDS, and the DAC data centers, to recommend them to develop tools that can help users to leverage data quality information. SDS and DACs should develop tools to help the data users to easily use data quality information for their research, to better help them finding and accessing and processing data based on user-defined quality criteria. For example, such quality information and this capability to enable users to leverage the quality information should be incorporated in the NASA's SD search tool and worldview. That's a data visualization user interface. And a lot of other recommendations can be found following the URL that I'm going to give at later point of this presentation. So besides the higher level recommendation, we also identified some more concrete implementation solutions that hopefully users, data providers and data users or DACs or data centers can adopt to help to improve the quality information management. And we identified 26 implementation solutions, and those 26 implementation solutions are captured and published through the Earth Data Wiki by following this link. And this slide shows one example. That's about the NASA GSFC data quality screening service and what that solution does and what kind of quality information that service, that particular solution can address. And then there's some additional URLs that you can follow to find more detailed information about that particular solution. But by following this Earth Data Wiki link, you can check the entire list of the 26 implementation solutions. And this is just the summary of those 26 implementation solutions, but you can download actually an Excel spreadsheet that contains all the detailed information about that implementation solution. And we expect that this master list, solution master list, is an active master list, even though the data quality working group has finished, has ended. We still encourage users to volunteer to contribute additional implementing solution to NASA SDIS, and those solutions can be added into this master solution, solution master list. So go back to our presentation. The next thing is about the reuse readiness assessment, which was led by Bob Downs. It's basically to evaluate how easy to reuse a particular solution that that is one of the 26 solutions. Say we encourage users to reuse or adopt a particular solution to improve the data quality management practice. And how easy will that be? And we want to give the potential adopters an estimated difficulty or easiness to leverage or adopt that particular solution. And we leveraged the reuse readiness levels, RRL, to assess the reuse readiness of a particular solution from a number of different aspects, like whether documentation is well provided, and the extensibility, modularity, packaging, portability. And I will provide a link to a document which you can find additional information about this particular activity. And then the data quality template, and this was led by David Moroni. It's basically leverage the recommendations that came out of the data quality working group to come up with a template or a tool for DACs, even though DACs were the main focus, but ideally this could be used by any data provider or data center to evaluate qualitative basis the overall quality of all varieties of individual earth science data sets. Like you want to evaluate what is the overall quality of a data product from mainly two aspects, the science quality and the product quality. Whenever we talk about science quality, we mainly mean like what kind of the uncertainty, the precision, the accuracy, like the information, the quality information that's natively internally to a data product. But product quality is more about whether you have provided complete documentation, standardized the metadata information, whether you make those documentation and metadata easily accessible by the data users. Next section is about the 6 documents that we delivered to ISO, the NASA SDIS Standards Office. The reason that we did this was to encourage the audience, the entire audience within NASA and beyond NASA to know what we have done, know the recommendations came out of our working group activities, and hopefully we can benefit more, and also encourage feedbacks and comments from the community. So the first document that we delivered to ESO and published through ESO was the data management plan template for data producers. And this document has already been published through ESO. The lead author on this document was Rama. And the purpose for this document is to provide data producers with guidance on the contents of data management plans. And data producers here, we mean like the science investigator-led processing system, or science data system, or research analysis or application funded PIs, or the measures program projects within NASA measures program. And this document includes significant guidance on planning for providing information about data quality. Here, the important thing is planning. That means this document is usually provided or developed at the early stage of a particular project. And this is the URL that you can find and access the documentation that's already published through the ESO, the standards office. I encourage you to take a closer look at this document when you have time. And then the next document that we published, that's already published, is the data management plan template for DAGs. And the previous one was mainly focusing on data producers and data providers. And this one is for like data centers like DAGs. The lead authors on this document were Donna Scott and Rama. And data producers provide data management plan covering their products to be delivered by the DAGs. And then DAGs, from their perspective, may also to choose to develop more general data management plan to describe their data operations. And here it's may, because this is not a mandatory or requirement, but they could do that if they wish to. And this template provides DAGs or any other data centers, if going beyond NASA, guidance on contents of such data management plan document. And again, this is the same URL that goes to the landing page of the published documents on ESO website. And then the third document is the comprehensive data quality recommendations for data producers and distributors. And I'm leading on this document. And this document is the biggest document that contains everything, all the 93 recommendations, all the solutions, master list, and also the methodology that we came up with those 93 recommendations from the very beginning of the data quality working group. So this is a huge document, and we summarize the approach and the outcomes of the entire data quality working group activities. We expect that organizations beyond NASA may also benefit from the methodology described here and the resulting recommendations for improvement. This is a huge document. It actually attracted a lot of attention from the community. We received like many comments, very constructive comments, close to 200. So we're almost done addressing those comments, and we expect that this document will be published through ESO really soon. And the fourth one is a high priority data quality recommendations for data producers and distributors. Actually, this one has already been published. I should change the status from in publication process to published. A lead author on this is Zhong Liu, and this is actually a subset of the comprehensive recommendation document, but it's more focused on NASA DAGs as this, and it contains 8 prioritized recommendation implementation actions that hopefully to be actionable and high priority for ESDIS, NASA ESDIS, to plan and coordinate concrete actions to be taken by the data producers and distributors. Yes, exactly. I will add that information. I will hand that information to Rama, and hopefully we can distribute that.
Yeah, all
URL.
these slides are going to be published and available.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be fine.
And the fifth document right now is under review through NASA's standards office, is the reuse readiness assessment of data quality software products. And I just mentioned the reuse readiness assessment activity. This is actually the document that summarizes the methodology and the findings from that effort. And Bob Downs was leading that reuse readiness assessment activity and also leading the development of this document. And we have just addressed round one review from ESO, the standards office, and it will be ready for round two review. And if you want to take a look at this document and contribute your suggestions or comments, feel free to contact NASA standards office and you will be added to the review list. And the last document that we delivered, actually are delivering to the standards office, is the DataQuality template and the lessons learned from the 2017-2018 pilot study of the DataQuality. And David was leading this activity, and David is also leading the development of this document. And we expect, I think the document is already done, and we are consolidating the internal comments from the working group members, and we shall be able to deliver this document to the standards office for review very soon. I think that's what I have. So many thanks to the working group members in the past 5 years. We have done a lot of work and activities, and we got a lot of outcomes and recommendations. And of course, data quality is always a tough topic, and it needs to be a continuous effort. We encourage the community to have additional communications with us. Thanks.
Questions?
Peng?
The data called that covers science and
Yes.
Thank you. For the data call templates, that covers science and product
Yes.
aspect.
Right.
Once that's assessment being carried out, is there a plan to capture it in the metadata records?
When you say once the assessment's been carried out, are you suggesting once it becomes operationalized? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, let's see if that's the case.
Yeah, so there's been a preliminary assessment on the data call, and that was what the pilot study is meant to embody, is kind of this preliminary assessment of the data call template to assess sort of like readiness for operational implementation. Once the findings are published through ESO, it's really a decision by ESDIS as to whether to operationalize, if you will, that template, and where it goes from that point is anybody's guess.
So there is a link included in the slides, which you can click and you will get to this page. This is Earth Data Wiki page that describes the template, DataQuality template, both the science quality template and product quality template. It lists all the elements included in the template and description of each element.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. Or other questions.
Okay. So what's the call word in this data call? Just not quite getting the context
That's
there.
a good question. David, will you be able to?
Where's the call? So it looks to be like a template for describing a data set in a register or something like that. Is that right? The quality aspects of the.
Yeah, it's actually a template that can help you to evaluate or assess the quality of a data product. And it's called DataQuality template.
Yeah, I think I was responsible for using the word data call, so I'll explain. Generally, we have, in NASA terminology, we get calls from headquarters or somewhere to indicate how things are going on various things. So these are referred to as data calls. So here we are making a call to the DACs, data centers, to indicate how the data quality is with respect to for all the data sets according to this template. That's why we called it data call.
What? You can hear me? Oh, there we go. I'm working with the EVS 3 project teams right now, and they're the first ones to use your new DMP for DPs, the template. And I'll have some feedback for you on that, of where there's some terminology confusion for the scientists. But in general, it's there's a lot more data quality, which is good, but it's also really important that we, I think, synthesize that a little bit more, because it is causing some confusion with the scientists and way things are phrased and the things being asked for. And so I have a lot of feedback on that to offer.
Thank you very much, Deborah. I think definitely if we expand the scope of the work, like going from remote sensing to other types of observation, I think questions will arise, and we will be very happy to hear that.
So just a quick comment in response to that. I appreciate the feedback, Deborah. But one comment in response to that is one of the reasons why we wanted to publish so many documents in one sort of group of documents was for that exact purpose, is because there is going to be
there's a lot of terminology, especially for people who are seeing this the first time. And so we try to, in these various documents, point you to the more foundational papers, and that's where we try to do it all in one big cluster of documents. And it's sort of like an encyclopedia. So the DMP, you'll see terminology that may be formally defined in the actual DMP guidance document. But we try to, we do a better job of it, but we try to reference those terminologies in the more foundational papers.
And I agree. I think the key issue for me is working with
Yeah. Put the next one. David's presentation. Number 3. Just minimize these things.
I've written a guide to go with that template for the airborne community. And so I want to bring that to you guys to share what I've written and how it's written in a different language. It's written to the scientists themselves in a language they understand.
Okay, I think at this point, though, we need to move on. And we do have, well, we have cut into the discussion period a little bit, but at the end of the session, we have 15 minutes allocated. So why don't we take it up there if you have further discussion. So David, take it away.
Okay, so as many of you may already be aware, about a year ago we had a couple of breakout sessions devoted towards at the last summer meeting. These 2 breakout sessions are devoted towards establishing the terminologies and sort of the scope of what we would actually put together into this, what we call the uncertainty white paper. And the uncertainty white paper actually began as a recommendation from the ESIP summer 2017 meeting. But it wasn't until last year where we actually started taking some serious action in response to that recommendation. And so that culminated into this couple of breakout sessions last year in which many of you here were a part of. Some of you weren't a part of it. That's okay. So we'll inform you on where we've come since then. But just to kind of get started on the background of motivation and why should we even really care about this topic of earth science data uncertainty is firstly is that the information provides credibility to data, which leads to the credibility of the science that is based on the data. It can also be kind of looked at as sort of this unbiased telephoto lens that you otherwise wouldn't see with the naked eye into the subtleties about the data that would otherwise just go unnoticed. But what it also does is it provides a scientist with discernible information about which data set is most suitable, and especially in today's world where many data sets exist for the same type of observation or quantity of interest based purely on statistics, which are agnostic to the results, which the data sets may or may not be utilized to support. As we are now within what many refer to as the age of big data, which is we're now very well steeped into that age. The big issue here is that many users, mostly referring to the non-experts in numerical analysis and statistics, are often left to their own devices as to how to sift through this type of information, this uncertainty information, and as well as how to derive it. And essentially, many people are actually deriving this information from scratch, using their own techniques and methods, which may or may not be suitable for the type of data that they're trying to assess. The other thing is that the uncertainty information fundamentally impacts the science quality of the data, but the availability and the packaging of the information, something that we also talk about in the paper, is something that can have a very significant downstream impact on the product, the stewardship, and the service quality. And you saw what these various aspects, constituents of data quality look like from the introductory presentation that Rama gave a minute ago. So getting into the primary scope of the white paper, initially there was a big emphasis, a big push on recommendations. But as we had a lot of teleconferences and conversations, especially last year in the summer meeting, we ultimately came to the conclusion that really what we need to start with is a paper that focuses on discovery. And so the idea here is that we would just focus on just discovering the breadth of the approaches with regard to earth science data uncertainty quantification, uncertainty characterization, so UQ and UC, as well as the dissemination and utilization of the UQ, UC information by data providers and end users. And so from that, we decided that there's 4 perspectives that really need to be addressed at this fundamental discovery approach. And so that would be mathematical, programmatic, observational, and user. I'm going to go into more detail on what those actually are in the forthcoming slides. The other aspect here is we wanted to try to identify the commonalities and differences between these perspectives. And so the paper is intending to address those as well. As each perspective we discover has slightly different approaches to uncertainty information. And so there will definitely be some commonalities, but there will also be some differences in how those approaches are diverging. Also, we tried to do a pretty significant outreach to various experts in the field, and we did this through, I don't say it explicitly in the slides here, but we did numerous session calls at the fall AGU meetings, as well as ESIP summer, ESIP winter, and the various ESIP teleconferences. Some people here in the room were actually invited and were keynote speakers to some of those conferences. And as a result of these session proposals, these sessions were actually quite successful and quite well attended, we were able to develop some relationships with these experts in their fields, and it turned into them wanting to actually participate in this actual activity that we have before us. And so they're representing these various aspects of earth science, data informatics, metrology, data science statistics, remote sensing, in situ and disciplinary fundamental research of all different types of disciplines. The one thing that we did kind of discuss, but we decided it really wasn't something we wanted to touch on, was numerical modeling. It was considered for the sake of a use case discussion at one point, but it was decided to be left out for the sake of focusing on just the approaches towards observational data. And it was primarily due to just a lack of, it wasn't so much a lack of interest, it was more a lack of expertise to be able to properly address that specific topic. So moving into the 4 perspectives, the first one again was mathematical, championed by Jonathan Hobbs at JPL. He's actually sitting right next to Deborah, in case you're wondering. You want to shake his hand if you want. Anyways, so John really carried, I would say, the lion's share of not just, I wouldn't say he's just the champion of this section. I would say he's really the champion of the entire paper, in the sense that this section really lays out the foundational terminologies and concepts from a purely computational mathematical perspective, and it's a very academic look at what is uncertainty from a UQ/UC perspective. Various constructs such as mean square error, PDFs, quantiles, confidence intervals, etc., quantities of interest. But what really brought this home to many of us who are not really doing a deep dive like John does in his day-to-day career is that we really discovered that uncertainty is more than just error. It's also, more importantly, it's the probability distribution. It's the probability of the entire quantity of interest. And so that's the thing that really drove it home to us. And also, many of these probability distributions tend to be non-Gaussian and non-normal distributions. And when we discover that, we realize that there's a lot of these traditional methods, like the mean square error approach, which do assume a perfectly Gaussian distribution, are really not sufficient metrics to use in and of themselves. They might be good as a first look, but not as a final solution to these problems. So the other thing here is that it also presents directly applicable use cases. So I'm referring to the section again here. The use cases that were presented primarily from mathematical definitions are intended to be applicable to observational earth science data, primarily from a remote sensing perspective, but which also utilizes consistent metrology for a variety of measurement types. Although I would say that the focus of the use case discussion in the paper was mostly with regard to satellite-based remote sensing. I will say that the metrology and the computational aspects are directly applicable to all sorts of observational data. John, you're agreeing with that? Whether it be suborbital or in situ type data sources. There is a schematic that I'm borrowing from John. Thank you for putting that in the paper. That's really awesome. I'm by no means an expert on Bayes' theorem, but this is just used just to illustrate one of the schematics that we talk about, just to illustrate the importance of probability and probability distributions when it comes to characterizing your quantity of interest. So moving on to the programmatic section, this is championed by Rama, and I asked Rama just purely based upon his level of knowledge. I kind of consider him an encyclopedia, a walking encyclopedia on all things legal and sort of especially when it comes to policies and procedures, not just within NASA and domestically, but also internationally. Rama's done a lot of international collaborations as well, and so he led that effort, but he had a lot of people also on that section of the paper, on that team, some other co-authors that were able to provide a little bit more nuanced information, such as for the NOAA perspective, as well as more the international perspective as well. So I have some examples here. We have examples from things like congressional law, some things where the congressional law actually was driving U.S. Policy at key agencies such as NOAA and NASA, but not necessarily limited to NOAA and NASA. Perhaps even could be extrapolated to other agencies producing data where they need to have very specific requirements for capturing data quality information, specifically uncertainty information, and making sure that it's well disseminated. So we also consider international agreements such as by the UN, which leads to things like the IPCC, the World Meteorological Organization. There's also CEOS, which is an international organization in which NASA, and I think even NOAA has a key role in that. 5 minutes left? Okay. And this also considers multilateral agreements and statements and policies by EU-sponsored organizations and agencies, such as ESA, the European Space Agency, Fiducio, which is the fidelity of uncertainty information from climate data records from Earth observations. There's also UncertWeb, which is sort of like a webified version of the uncertainty markup language. And there's METEOC, to name a few examples. And next we have the observational section championed by Justin Goldstein from the NOAA side, and Justin graciously stepped up to do what I think it was a phenomenal job in this section here, which is intending to discuss primarily the foundational approaches to UQ and UC from an Earth observation perspective, including both perspectives from both the point-based studies, such as the Eulerian specifications, as well as those conducted in which there's a variation in both space and time. These are the Lagrangian type studies. But the section actually went a little further, and it actually had a couple subsections. One was CalVal, which looked at the UQ-UC approaches from a calibration and validation perspective, but also the role that's being played by ground truthing and the type of data that's used for ground truth and how that plays into that. And then there was another subsection called product development, examining the various approaches and considerations toward making uncertainty information available for the common types of observational data products, with a focus on making this available at the production stage of the data, which is often not done. A lot of times the uncertainty information is made post hoc, well after production of the data. And then lastly, we have the user perspective championed by Bob Downs. I don't see Bob in the room. Oh, there you go. Sorry, you're right. So Bob is in the room. Thank you, Bob, from Columbia University. So this is a wonderful section that was much needed, because we're sort of looking at the ways in which the user community are leveraging uncertainty information, and whether or not their approaches are effective or ineffective from a variety of methods, whether they be communication, dissemination, what tools and services are being used to visualize the information, as well as certain multivariate analysis type methods. So there's a variety of examples that Bob goes into, including the ISO 19157 metadata model for data quality, the uncertainty markup language, uncertain ML. There's a CO2 sys software, which it's a package for doing numerical analysis for CO2 data. And there's this OGC's Testbed 12 innovation program that OGC is a part of as well. So there's some next steps. One is, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, and so that's resulted in a bit of a delay in the finalization of the paper itself, of the finalization of the final sections of the paper, including the commonalities, differences, and conclusions, which I intend to complete by August. But what also needs to be done is, when the introduction of the paper was first written, the introduction was really intended to be guidance for the authors, as opposed to an introduction to the readers. Now the introduction needs to be rewritten so that it's suitable for the readers, because when the introduction was first written, it was meant to provide guidance as to this is what we should try to focus on. But now that we have the information in there, we need to kind of go back and rewrite that introduction for better alignment. We also have a significant lack of graphics and figures even still, so I'm going to have to try to do a little bit of work in fitting those in. And then by September, we hope to have the actual prep work done out of the way for actually getting it up to be a publication-ready white paper. So we've already consulted with Rose Borden. Thank you for being here. And so I think Rose has agreed to take a look at some of these things and help us to improve the styling and try to have a nice consistent adherence to things like the references and citations, in which I think we already agreed we're going to use the AGU standard for that. So that'll help us get us closer to that point. Ideas beyond publication. So these are some things that have been talked about already. But one of the things that we want to do near term is to draft and publish a shortened executive summary, because the white paper as it stands now is tens of pages. So we want to maybe have something that's on the order of maybe 5 or 6 pages that we can put in a more prominent journal such as Data Science or EOS. There might be other ideas that Rama and Peng may have already discussed when I was absent earlier. But the more long-term goal that we've already talked about too, I think many people here are already in agreement on it, is we want to have a part 2 paper which focuses on making recommendations to the community. Now that we've had this discovery of approaches, we can then think about making some concrete recommendations on and really providing some actionable solutions for people. So with that, I just want to acknowledge all the co-authors. So in addition to myself, Rama, and Peng, there's 19 additional co-authors that I want to acknowledge. Their names are here, and their affiliations are listed here as well. Thank you. I'll take questions.
Yeah. While we wait for questions, I'd like to advance this to the next speaker's slides. And somebody who deals with Mac should do this. Where is this? Okay. So the next speaker is speaking from Australia to us. So Ivana, I can advance your slides for you if you just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, that's all right. So good morning, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, good. And thank you for inviting me to present about the Data Quality Domain Working Group at your session. My name is Ivana Ivanova. I'm based at Curtin University, but I speak on behalf of Data Quality Domain Working Group at OGC, which I currently co-chair with two of my other colleagues. And in this presentation, I'd like to present the group to you and walk you through the current subjects of interest in the group, which changed in the course of time. So yes. I'm not sure how much to say about Open Geospatial Consortium because I expect most of you in the room, whom I don't see, only here and there. So I don't know even how many of you are in the room, but I assume everybody knows OGC. If not, then just briefly, the consortium that deals with de facto standardization, which aims at enabling geospatial web. We
I've
can
not
proceed.
counted, but I think we have about 30 people in the room.
Oh, wow.
So
We can proceed.
Oh, okay.
Data Quality Domain Working Group is a group that's been established with a charter in December 2006, and this was an interesting period when already several ISO data quality standards existed, as you may remember, and though they were mature from 2 to 6 years already. And the main objective of the then established Data Quality Domain Working Group was to see what the standardized data quality elements and procedures and metadata mean for the community. So the Domain Working Group decided to execute a robust survey in between 2007 and 2008, to which they received quite a lot of responses, of which only 17% were OGC members. And that's interesting because the group managed to reach out beyond its internal circles and connected with both suppliers and consumers of spatial data from variety of areas where geospatial data has been in use. Now, a summary of or result of this survey has been a discovery that almost everybody said data quality was important, but a substantial amount of respondents stated that they had no clear approach for managing it, even with ISO data quality standards in place. Now, several reasons were listed, and sometimes they mentioned that people were unaware of standards or they were just missing metadata, and thereby they had no idea how to manage data quality within their organizations or determine the fitness for use for their purposes. Next slide, please. Now, the result of this survey had the impact on the work of Data Quality Domain Working Group, in which the group defined their mission fairly in a producer-centric way, and the aim was to establish a framework or a model to help quality assurance included into OGC's focus area, and that's web services to enable geospatial web. So the idea was to facilitate sharing and access to high quality geospatial information, high quality meaning geospatial information equipped with data quality metadata. And as such, the group focused on data quality standard aspects such as accuracy, completeness, semantic interoperability, scale, spatial reference systems, projections. And as the first practical outcome was their participation in one of the OGC's web services testbed, in which the group collaborated in defining the topology quality assessment for geospatial geoprocessing workflows. Next, please. So this has been initially an initial motivation of data quality domain working group, and since then the group operated online. That we meet on OGC's technical committee meetings, but the group generally is quiet and sort of well, most of people think they are dormant, or we are dormant, but so we work distributed within all sorts of other data quality domain working groups. And in 2019 or 2017, the group reunited, and most of the members were present, and we realized that producer-centric approach to data quality is something I don't want to say outdated, it's still important, but it's not sufficient to manage data quality. So with the discussions we decided to redefine the mission. And next slide, please. And the mission is more towards user-centric approach. I'll talk about it a bit later. And just to mention the current program of work of Data Quality Domain Working Group. Now, our focus is in various domains. So we are there to participate in contribution to OGC and other standards. So for instance, one of the outcomes of the Data Quality Working Group members is the Geospatial User Feedback Standard, which is available on OGC's website. And this standard has the main objective to extend the classical producer-centric data quality standard by ISO, so the 19157, with additional elements which allow user participation in defining the data quality as part of their metadata. Data quality domain working group members also drive discussions on quality, and one of the examples is UncertainML, mentioned by David earlier, and this has been published as discussion paper a long time ago. I don't remember the date, possibly 2007 or 8. And the discussion paper just defines the XML model of encoding all sorts of uncertainty measures, which can be associated with quality evaluation reports in the metadata for data quality, or in the metadata for data products. Now, our quite frequent work of data quality by data quality members is the review of standards and engineering reports. So internal documents that deal with data quality are sent to us for review, and we actually advise on how to improve from the quality perspective, as well as we give our reviews to ISO quality related and other standards. Next, please. So from the actual work in between 2008 until 2017, many data quality members realized that our work is focusing on applicability of producer-centric data quality standards, and we realized that this is also because the current view on managing data quality was really standards driven, which means focusing more on producers. And we decided to change our mission into more user-centric focus. And so here are just examples of 4 questions which drive our discussions at the moment. So what we want to know is what is the understanding of quality within producers and consumers and spatial data, and how do these two notions actually meet, overlap, and or how do they differ at all? Next, what are the limitations of use of data quality information? So that producer-centric or standard encoded data quality information, why is it not used? Is it because it's difficult to comprehend by user community, or is it because it's just insufficiently describes the data? Next, our current focus is to look at how could we include non-authoritative spatial data, so those that are produced by volunteers or citizen scientists. How can we include this type of data with authoritative data and ensure that they are fit for decision making? So what are the quality expectations of for describing such data to give them relevance? And then also we'd like to see how to improve standards to address fitness for use. And that's one of the current efforts. We'd like to see if there is a way to include geospatial user feedbacks content within the revised ISO 19157, which is to happen in the coming years. Next slide, please. And so in this slide, I give an overview of one activity because in the previous slides I mentioned that the current data quality domains working group is not only more user-centric, but also we'd like to actually see how to collaborate with other groups within OGC on same aspects. So as I mentioned, many of our members actually share a membership in different domain working groups, and they deal with, or they are still interested in data quality from that different perspectives. So at one of the meetings with Citizen Science Domain Working Group, we discussed that there is seriously a need to develop some framework or recommendations or best practice in including citizen contributed data into the set of authoritative spatial data. So we established what we call a NAD ad hoc, where NAD stands for non-authoritative data, which is not the best term, but this is how we go by, and nobody changed it today. But what we mean is crowdsourced data, citizen contributed data, volunteer geographic information, and the likes. At the moment, the group works on a best practice document. The link is included in slides, and we aim at specify several use cases through which we would like to produce an advice on metadata, which needs to be collected together with crowdsourcing and volunteer geographic information. We want to give advice on how to combine these data with official data and how to deliver it to the users. And we would like to also advise or possibly define RESTful application programming interfaces for access to these data. And the last slide, please, Rama.
Yeah, would you be able to wrap up in a couple of minutes?
Yes, I have the last one coming now, please. Next. Now, data quality domain working group stresses collaboration on spatial data quality needs, and this is also why I'm happy to present the group to you now to see whether we can actually find some additional partners. So as I said, we work within OGC with different related groups. So two main collaborating partners are the Citizen Science Domain Working Group and Quality of Service and Experience, in which they deal with aspects of web services, quality aspects of web services, and then how users can actually benefit from these. And we also collaborate with external partners with the group conveying this session, and then the Australian counterpart of such, in which we are at the moment in discussions on forming something similar to IQC, which is called now Australian Data Quality Interest Group. And in few months, hopefully, this group is going to be established and reaches out to ECIP's IQC. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I heard that.
Sure. If there are any questions, you really have to use the mic this time for sure. Yeah. Changlin, just one question. You don't have a lot of time.
Very quick. Yeah, very good. I just want to ask Ivana, could you elaborate a bit more about how you're going to enforce or ensure the data consistency and the integrity? I do see the one item they try to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So this was the one of the earlier slides, and the aspects emphasized in bold just to show that the group at its initial function actually contributed to an engineering report to topology quality assurance, which was one of the aspects of logical consistency. Now, what we provided is an advice of how to encode this into web services, and then I don't think the result was any recommendation of how to ensure, because that's already up to the producers to develop mechanisms of quality evaluation or topological consistency evaluation for their for the producers from which they outsource data. And there are several projects. If you're interested, then please contact me on email, because I can direct you to some efforts from Europe where these recommendations had been put in place.
Okay, Peng is going to be speaking next. Just go to this. Yes.
Hi, my name is Payne. I'm a researcher at NC State University, also affiliated with NOAA National Centers for Environmental Information. I'm going to provide an update on maturity metrics related activities. So as Ivana has mentioned that everybody thinks data quality is important, but it's very hard to do. And there are a number of reasons or factors that contribute to that. Part of the reason is there are many quality attributes. So the quality means different things to different people. And sometimes the same term means different things. And sometimes there are different terms means, same term means different things to different people. And sometimes there are different terms means different, same thing. The maturity metrics has the advantage of providing a structure and also help reduce the scope. So it helps you narrow down the scope, and depends on how you want to define your quality aspect. And actually just from the last several talks, you already know there's different aspects people can define the two. For this particular talk, I'm going to talk about the application and adaptation of a data stewardship maturity metrics, and stewardship quality follows on the 4 different domains that Rama has touched on. And I'll talk a little bit about status of RDA FAIR maturity metrics work, and touch on some other maturity metrics related activity that I'm aware or participate with. So as I have indicated, quality means many things to different people, and I would like to focus on particularly in this talk is I mean distinctive attributes or characteristics of something. That something is the data and information quality. So for maturity is the state of how mature of that thing is, and based on the Beck et al. 2009 definition, maturity metrics is the assessment model with desired evolution. That's where you can define what's your evaluation. It's progressive, so that helps identify the layer, the level of maturity for a thing you're trying to evaluate. For the data stewardship maturity metrics, it is the metrics developed to assessing the stewardship practices applied to individual data sets. It's developed jointly by NCEI and KICS-NC, that's Corporate Institute between NC State and NCEI. And here I want to emphasize on the domain subject expert, because the stewardship really enlists the expertise from science domain that has knowledge on the product, and from the data managers, they knows the best practices how to manage the data, and the technology, because we're not really dealing with one or two data sets, we're dealing with thousands, hundreds of thousands data sets, and how to evaluate and presenting that quality information. It really needs the participation of the technologist. And the maturity metrics was developed by the institutionology and also the community expert. We have reached out to the ESIP, HU, and AMS, and we are not really developing any new best practices or standards. We basically leveraging the community best practices and the national and international standards. So they're bounded by the open archive information system that where the data comes in, and before data comes out, we have identified 9 key components, and that's a list here. We have the self-evaluation templates that's located at the bit.ly, which is bit.ly/DSMM template. Has more information. So we look at a number of the scale structures. We have decided to adapt CMMI maturity scale structure. That's from ad hoc all the way to well managed. But the CMMI language, most of the scientists are not familiar or cannot be related to. So we also leverage the level of the maturity of a digital repository. That's more of ad hoc, minimal, and intermediate, advanced, optimal. And this is for the sake of new people, and my apology for people who have seen this before. With increased maturity and the data become more open because they're more managed and they are more trusted, and the level 1 tend to be ad hoc, the practice of more ad hoc, and there are more risk associated with it. Because of this layered and progressive nature, we can actually use it for fitness for purpose in terms of how you define your requirements. For example, for research data, they may be just being available, that's their project requirement. But when you get to operational data, you really need to be documented to enable that data and software and as well as the information to be traceable. And for high influential data, then you really need to be well documented, because you may have to be compliant with the reproducibility requirement. So the NOAA One-Stop has you applied this to over 800 NOAA data sets, and majority of assessment are done by One-Stop metadata content editor. And we started, then we realized that there are a lot of things needs to be automated. And so there are a lot of best practices that are developed for people who are interested in the application practical aspect. We have a paper submitted to Data Science Journal, and preprint is at bit.ly DSMM-1stop. So it is was helpful when NCEI goes through a narrow audit. It's considered as a positive factor. And so it's when the Paleo World Data Center is doing its renew certification. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the number of international data stewardship entities have adapted to their own maturity metrics. The data management and stewardship maturity metrics of VIGAS, it was developed by the Vegas Data Stewardship Interest Group that was led by ESA, European Space Center. It was to help them to ensure the compliances to the implementation guidelines of CEO's data management principles. It was led by Yolanta, and among others, and she has a EGO 2019 poster, and the slides will be available at the IQC website. So if you don't write it down, you can go there after talk. Before I forget, sorry, I wanted to stop. If you have not signed in, and we'd appreciate it, you put here, we do want to capture all the attendance here. Another major one is by the WMO, that's the Stewardship Maturity Metrics for Climate Data, and it's developed under Commission for Climate, and it's by the working group as a part of high quality global data management framework for climate. So for climate data, the stewardship part is important, but also the science part, for example, and uncertainty, as well as the governance, is to ensure the quality of the data. It's become very important, and this is also developed to ensure to provide high quality data for the policy making, especially with IPCC. They are providing guidance on the climate monitoring as well. They want to ensure the quality of the data product going into that process. So I'm going to do very quickly for the FAIR data maturity metrics and FAIR data principle. You probably already know. It started development by 2014. As of last week, and I checked, the citation was almost over 1,400, but the intent was to provide a set of the community agreed guidelines and principles. However, in practice, its implementation is all over the map. So the RDA FAIR data maturity model working group has convened, and it's approved in early January to come up a core assessment criteria, as well as the toolkits and checklist. And the timeline is to develop in about 12 months from January, so it's late this year. And currently there are over 100 working group and has a strong EU support. And the analysis of existing approach has been done, and the community development of the maturity indicator has started. I think they're closing pretty much in September, in case for the in time for the next meeting. This is other maturity related activities, and for the service we have started last year. We had the draft, but the core members of the working group had other high priorities, so we're going to try to take another step at it this year. And me and Ruth and also Bob is a part of the core member as well. The one thing I want to mention about when I was at EGU meeting, Rosemary, who is who is part of the team develop the core trustee repository requirement, and he has talked to me about the maybe mapping the maturity metrics to the requirement. And when I got back, and Wendy has contacted me not long ago, said, well, when we were doing Paleo World Data Center recertification, we noticed the synergy between the DSM as well as the requirement, and she would like to work with me to look at a little bit more about that, potentially mapping between the two. So I was very excited. I said, yes, I will support you for that. And another part, this is the last one, is really coming up the collaboration between the Barcelona supercomputer and the IQC member. And they are in charge of ensure data for the Copernicus climate data store. And they are interested in collaborating with us to identify the best practices potentially for model data. And they have a look at it, existing maturity metrics, and they felt like the some the characteristics of model data are not captured by the current maturity metrics. So potentially there's a collaboration in that aspect. Thank you very much. As Rama has mentioned, I'm very passionate about the quality and maturity metrics to assessing and presenting quality information. I am maintaining a mailing list. If you have related work I'm not aware, you like to communicate with the community, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to help. Thank you.
So any questions for Peng? Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I just wanted to know more information about, I know this RDA FAIR working group has been meeting for quite a while now. Are they planning on yet making another maturity matrix or taking an assessment of everything that's out there?
They have a look at it, all the implementations are out there, and trying to come out a basic set that's for everybody to use. It's not clear whether it's going to be maturity metrics, but they definitely want to come up a set of identifier, they call them maturity indicators, that can be utilized for both human and machine. But FAIR principle tend to kind of leaning towards machine implementations.
So, yeah.
Yeah, very good, very quick. Just very similar questions. So for these 9 components, are you consider this all inclusive or just temporarily? Okay, you maybe still subject to extend it. Maybe later you when I look at them, okay, very conclusive, okay, but inclusive. But I'm not sure if this group already considered in terms of the maturity. Okay, this is all components good enough.
You're talking about FAIR?
Yes, right.
Okay. So FAIR is really bounded by the FAIR principle, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And in the 2016 paper, they have a guiding principles. So they are like A1, A2. So for each guiding principles, and the working group is trying to come up a checklist or a common set to say, what does that mean? What's the indicators one can use to evaluate their fairness? That answer your question? Okay.
Okay, so I just want to draw your attention again to the meeting notes URL here. If you have not, if you go there, you should be able to enter your name in the attendee list. So if you have not already done so, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. The rest of the time, we have about 5 minutes left for any further discussion. I want to raise a question here. We have dealt with about 20 use cases. 16 came from NASA, and we created a few more. What is it, about 3 years ago, I think, during a summer meeting. And most of our background of people who had been participating was from the remote sensing area. Therefore, most of the use cases are focused that way. And recently I've heard quote unquote objections, in some cases strenuous objections about that focus, and the need for considering use cases that cover, airborne measurements, in situ measurements, and so on. And we don't have really good use cases for data quality for such things. So we need some volunteers to join the information quality cluster who have that kind of background, contribute some use cases, and do some further analysis. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor for discussion for the next few minutes. Yes, sir.
I work with a program that can provide some of those use cases.
Okay.
I'm happy to help a little bit, but I do want to, I don't want to discourage, but sometimes it's actually nice not to have too much of an overarching theory about something, because you can make the simple things complicated. So if you have a very top-down model of how you're going to disseminate, track, whatever, uncertainty, quality, whatever it may be, you have to allow the simple cases to branch off, essentially break some of the higher rules because they stay simple. If you say every data set from satellite to in situ to shipborne to whatever has to follow all these guiding principles, you're going to lose users because it's so complicated, and you're going to make the data set in the end extremely complicated. So there needs to be, I don't have the answer to it, but we need to keep that in mind when we're building these guiding principles.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think your point is legitimate, but on the other hand, still, for practical reason, some other community, okay, they do complain. Because we do some review of the documentation, some reviewers, they do express, okay, they've been left out. Anyway, that's not. But I do want to, okay, well, it's amazing through the Yashin's talk. We have 6 documentation since 2014. But I do suggest to the group, perhaps we can kind of, okay, write a shorter, okay, technical report or whatever, even go to some paper to consolidate all the 6 paper, put together some kind also like a advocate, like we discussed before the meeting. Data quality definitely is very important, but not very sexy or not attractive. But this time probably we can make it better short paper, consolidate all this 6 documentation. Maybe we can focus on the remote sensing now, but at the same time, if you publish out, you can definitely attract more people from other community. They can chime in or somehow maybe can also trigger their own practice.
Okay. Other comments?
Thanks everyone for the good talks. This is kind of an administrative item. I think a few of us have AGU abstracts on our mind. Is there anything going on at AGU that you'd like to point us to?
Yes, good point. Well, there is a session on uncertainty that David is convening. And yes, right, there are 2 sessions. Both have the word uncertainty in them, but they are focusing on different aspects. So there are 2 sessions like that. Yes.
There's another session called data reuse. And this would be ideal for this group. And I'd like to point out that that got classed as a centennial session. And centennial sessions are free of the first author rule. So think of David in the other one, and also remember the reuse one, because you can have a second abstract.
All right. Thank you. I think Robert, Bob has a session as well. Bob Downs has a session.
Yes, I think it's IN 003, and they're looking for people who would like to contribute presentation on the trustworthiness of data repositories and improving curation and stewardship.
So back from the administrative details to the broader picture, I'm Adrian. I'm from the Australian Research Data Commons. As Ivana pointed out, we're looking to leverage all the great work of this group there to bring together similar data stewardship government agencies as well as research organizations into a working group there. So we will want to start exactly where you ended and build on all that great work. I suppose just to the comment there around there's a lot of documentation and it's I suppose we're dealing with data quality here, so precision and it's important. But as a newcomer, you know, potentially, you know, alongside these documents, you know, some of the maybe a framework for thinking about data quality, some principles for data quality, so that you know you can take some of the core stuff and apply it in different situations. So that if I'm even on that maturity model that was pointed out before, sometimes you want, you know, the data quality is appropriate for a particular purpose. Well, I'd like to have some of those principles and a thinking framework for data quality that someone could use for, you know, lots of different purposes. So, and that would be a nice cohering element for the very impressive set of materials that you've developed.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment. And I think we are 2 minutes beyond the break time. So just want to thank all of you for attending this meeting and making it a success. And please do enter your names on the bit.ly link that I've given you there. And I guess, yeah, we'll put all this stuff on Figshare. This session has been recorded, and I think the recording may be put on Figshare as well. So, and the key takeaways, that's something that we should have talked about, and I didn't do that. So if you have some thoughts on what the key takeaways from this meeting are, we should include them in those notes pages as well. Then we can capture it for the benefit of the rest of the community. All right, thank you all.